What if I told you that in 2025, nearly 90% of rock and roll's earliest pioneers have passed, but a rare few, some nearing 100 years old, are still with us, holding on to the last echoes of a golden era, from Gene Vincent's raw, rebellious energy that gave us Be-Bop-A-Lula to Carl Perkins' groundbreaking Blue Suede Shoes that blended country and rock. Here are oldest rock and roll legends who are over 90 to 100 years old, 2025. 1. Elvis Presley. In the 1950s, Elvis Presley was one of the biggest names in rock and roll. His music changed everything. He mixed gospel, rhythm and blues, and country to create a sound that was fresh and exciting. His hip-shaking dance moves and powerful voice made him a star. Parents thought he was a bad influence, but teenagers loved him. Songs like Heartbreak Hotel and Hound Dog became huge hits, and his concerts were unlike anything people had seen before. He wasn't just a singer, he was a revolution. Hollywood noticed his talent, and he became a movie star too. Films like Jailhouse Rock and Viva Las Vegas made him even more famous. But it wasn't just his music and movies that made him special. Elvis turned himself into a brand, selling clothes, toys, and other merchandise. He even had TV specials watched by millions. His concert Aloha from Hawaii reached over 1 billion people, proving that he was more than just a musician. He was a global superstar. He also set trends in fashion. His slick-back hair, flashy jumpsuits, and big sunglasses became part of his image. People copied his style, and he became a symbol of rock and roll. Even after his death, his influence didn't fade. His home, Graceland, is now a museum visited by thousands every year. His music still sells, and his legacy lives on through modern artists. 2. Chuck Berry. In rock and roll history, Chuck Berry was one of the most important people. He didn't just play music, he changed it forever. His guitar skills and energetic performances set the stage for every rock musician who came after him. When he played Johnny B. Goode, he became a legend, inspiring countless people to pick up a guitar and play. Berry's songs told stories about teenage life, fun, and freedom. His lyrics were smart and full of humor, making them easy for young people to connect with. He helped define what rock and roll was supposed to sound like. But he didn't just change the music, he changed who listened to it. In a time when black and white people were often kept apart, his music brought them together. Songs like Roll Over Beethoven and Maybelline weren't about race. They were about energy, fun, and breaking the rules. One of Berry's most famous moves was the duck walk, a silly dance that showed rock music wasn't just for listening, it was for feeling. His guitar solos were fast and exciting, influencing famous musicians like Jimi Hendrix and Keith Richards. He made the electric guitar a star of its own. His impact was so big that NASA sent Johnny B. Goode into space on the Voyager spacecraft. That means his music could be heard by aliens one day. Even as he got older, Berry never stopped playing. He kept performing well into his 80s, proving that rock and roll had no age limit. If he were alive today at 99, he would probably still be on stage, rocking just as hard as ever. 3. Little Richard. In rock and roll history, Little Richard was one of the most exciting musicians. His music was loud, fast, and full of energy. People didn't just listen to his songs, they felt them. Born Richard Wayne Penniman, he turned the piano into a powerful instrument, banging out hits like Tutti Frutti, Long Tall Sally, and Good Golly, Miss Molly. His voice was wild and full of life, shaking the music world to its core. He mixed gospel singing with rock and roll beats, creating a sound no one had heard before. But Little Richard was more than just his music. He had a big personality and a bold style. He wore flashy clothes, had big hair, and acted like he owned the stage. He didn't care what people thought. He was going to be himself, no matter what. At a time when the United States was still divided by race, his concerts brought black and white fans together. He broke rules and opened doors for future musicians. Bands like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones looked up to him. Even Prince and other stars copied his bold fashion and confidence. Little Richard didn't just change music, he changed culture. His energy inspired styles like glam rock, funk, and hip-hop. He was a leader, showing others how to be fearless and unique. For a short time, he left rock and roll to sing gospel music. But he couldn't stay away forever. The fire inside him wouldn't let him stop. He came back, proving that his talent was bigger than any one genre. When he passed away in 2020, his legacy was already legendary. New musicians still listen to his songs and learn from his style. His influence is everywhere in rock and pop music today. If he were still alive in 2025 at 92, would he still be rocking? With a Little Richard, the answer is always a wop-bop-a-loo bop-a-lop bam-boom. 4. Jerry Lee Lewis. Born in Louisiana in the 1930s, Jerry Lee Lewis was a fireball in rock and roll. He grew up in a strict religious home, but no rules could hold him back. When he touched a piano, something wild took over. He didn't just play the keys, he pounded them. His music was loud and full of energy, just like him. He didn't learn his talent, he let it loose. His performances were so powerful, they left crowds amazed. People called him the Wild One because of the way he played. Every show was like a storm, shaking the stage and thrilling the audience. His songs, like Great Balls of Fire and Whole Lotta Shakin' Going On, weren't just music. They were explosions of sound and feeling. Lewis didn't need a guitar to be a rock star. He turned the piano into the heart of rock and roll. His left hand pounded out strong beats while his right hand flew over the keys, making music that crackled with energy. But his life wasn't just about music. Trouble followed him everywhere. Scandals nearly ended his career, but he never gave up. When rock and roll moved on, he changed direction. In the 1960s and 1970s, he became a country star, keeping the same wild spirit in his songs. By the time he entered the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in the 1980s, no one could deny his impact. He didn't just change rock music, he shaped blues and country too. Generations of musicians looked up to him for his raw, fearless style. If he had lived to 90 in 2025, he would have been one of the last great rock pioneers. He proved that the spirit of rock and roll never dies. His name isn't just in history books, it's in every rock song that still dares to be wild and free. 5. James Brown. Born in the 1930s into a poor family, James Brown was the heartbeat of soul music. His voice, his energy, and his rhythm made him stand out. He worked hard to escape poverty. He had nothing but determination and a love for performing. By the 1950s, he was already on stage, making people feel his music. Songs like Please, 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 and Try Me made him a rising star. But that wasn't enough for him. He wanted to change music forever. He wasn't just a singer, he was a powerhouse, moving with energy and passion. As the 1960s began, Brown changed music completely. His beats got sharper, his rhythm stronger, and his sound louder. Songs like Papa's Got a Brand New Bag and I Got You, I Feel Good weren't just catchy, they shaped the future of music. The funk he created influenced rock, R&B, and even hip-hop. Artists like Mick Jagger and Prince followed his lead. His performances were legendary. He moved fast, danced hard, and his band played with perfect timing. Every show was full of excitement. But Brown was more than music. His voice became a call for change. Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud wasn't just a song, it was a statement. He stood up for civil rights and inspired people to demand respect. On and off stage, he was strong, bold, and fearless. If he were alive in 2025 at 92, his name would still be a symbol of passion and power. His legacy isn't just about music, it's about making a difference. His grooves still play today, proving that music isn't just sound, it's strength, identity, and revolution. 6. Bo Diddley. While other musicians followed the usual way of playing, Bo Diddley changed rock and roll in a way no one else did. He made his own path. His beat was different, strong, steady, and impossible to ignore. It became the heartbeat of rock music. Songs like Bo Diddley and Who Do You Love were not just songs, they changed music. His rhythms were wild, exciting, and full of energy. He didn't just play music, he created something fresh and new. His guitar was more than an instrument, it was his tool to shake up the music world. He didn't just strum like others, he experimented with sound, making his own style. His square-shaped guitar became as famous as his music. Many famous bands, like the Rolling Stones and the Clash, took inspiration from him. His music became a part of rock's growth, helping to shape the sound of future musicians. But Bo Diddley was more than just a musician. He was a fighter. During a time when black artists had little control over their careers, he stood up for himself. He wanted creative freedom and made sure no one controlled his music. He set an example for many artists after him, proving that musicians should have power over their own work. If he were still alive in 2025, his influence would still be felt everywhere in rock music. His rhythms still inspire new generations, proving that real creativity never disappears. It only grows stronger. Great musicians may grow older, but their influence never fades. Their music and ideas live on, shaping new artists and keeping rock and roll alive. Rock never truly dies. It echoes forever. Fats Domino. Born in New Orleans, a city known for its music, Antoine Fats Domino Jr. played the piano like magic, creating rhythms that made people want to dance. Unlike many early rock musicians who used electric guitars, Domino built his music around a strong piano beat, a warm voice, and melodies that stuck in people's heads. His first big hit, The Fat Man, came in the late 1940s. Many say it was one of the first real rock and roll songs. His music wasn't about rebellion, it was about rhythm and joy, turning any place into a dance floor. By the 1950s, Domino was a star. His song, Ain't That a Shame, was loved by people of all backgrounds. But it was Blueberry Hill in 1956 that made him a legend. The song had a slow, smooth feel, and his voice made it unforgettable. Unlike other rock stars who grabbed attention with wild performances, Domino let his music speak for itself. He influenced many artists, including the Beatles, who admired his ability to blend rhythm and melody. He kept making music for years, proving that rock and roll was here to stay. Domino never left his roots. New Orleans was always home, and he played for new generations who hadn't even been born when he first became famous. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1986, securing his place in music history. If he were alive in 2025 at 97 years old, he would be one of the last great musicians from rock's early days. Even though he is gone, his music lives on. Somewhere, a piano is still playing his songs, keeping his spirit alive. True legends never fade away. 8. Bill Haley. With his band, Bill Haley and his Comets, Bill Haley helped start a music revolution. He took rock and roll from small clubs to the whole world. He didn't create rock and roll, but he made it famous. His music mixed country, western swing, and rhythm and blues. The result was exciting, energetic, and perfect for dancing. Young people loved it because it was new and different from their parents' music. In 1954, everything changed when he released Rock Around the Clock. It became the first rock song to reach #1 on the Billboard charts. This proved rock and roll was more than just a trend. It was here to stay. The song became even bigger in 1955 when it was used in the movie Blackboard Jungle. Suddenly, it was the anthem for teenagers everywhere. It was loud, fun, and rebellious, just like them. Almost overnight, Haley became a star. With his curled hair and wild energy, he became one of the first faces of rock and roll. More hit songs followed, like Shake, Rattle and Roll, and See You Later, Alligator. Each song was full of life and made people want to dance. Rock and roll was spreading fast, and Haley was leading the way. But fame doesn't last forever. Soon, younger and more charismatic stars like Elvis Presley and Chuck Berry took over. They had a fresh style that made Haley seem older and less exciting. Over time, he faded from the spotlight. Even though Haley was no longer the biggest star, his influence never disappeared. His music helped shape rock and roll and inspired future musicians. The sound he helped create could be heard in bands for generations. If he were still alive in 2025, he would be 100 years old. He might not be as famous as before, but his songs would still be playing. Rock and roll never really dies, and Bill Haley's music will always be a part of it. His legacy is the proof that music can change the world. 9. Warren Smith. Born in Mississippi, Warren Smith wasn't the biggest name in early rock and roll, but he was one of the best. He grew up with country and gospel music. At first, he wanted to be a country singer, but everything changed when he walked into Sun Records in Memphis. He was surrounded by legends like Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Johnny Cash, but he made sure he wasn't just another name in the crowd. His voice was sharp, full of energy, and perfect for rockabilly, a mix of country and rock and roll. In 1956, he made his mark with Rock and Roll Ruby, a song written by Johnny Cash. It was fast, wild, and full of life, just like rockabilly itself. Then came Ubungi Stomp in Red Cadillac and a Black Mustache. These songs were fun, full of attitude, and impossible to ignore. His music had a raw edge that made it different. While he never became as famous as some of his Sun Records friends, his music inspired many later bands. Groups like The Cramps and the Stray Cats kept his rockabilly spirit alive, proving that great music never really dies. It just changes over time. But the music world moved fast. In the 1960s, rock and roll changed, and Smith found it hard to keep up. Others adapted, but he struggled. Eventually, he left the spotlight. Even though he wasn't making new hits, his old songs stayed alive. Rockabilly fans never forgot his wild sound, and his records became treasures for those who loved early rock and roll. If he were still alive in 2025, at 93 years old, he would be one of the last living legends of rock's early days. His songs, full of fire and energy, still capture the magic of when rock and roll was new and dangerous. Somewhere in a small bar or playing on an old jukebox, his voice is still shaking the air, reminding people where real rock and roll began. 10. Johnny Kidd. Born Frederick Heath in London, Johnny Kidd was a rock and roll pioneer when the genre was still new. He didn't just copy others, he created his own style. Before British rock was well known, he was already making his mark. When he formed Johnny Kidd and the Pirates in the late 1950s, he wasn't just playing music, he was shaping the future of rock. His biggest hit, Shakin' All Over, shook the music world in 1960. The eerie guitar sound, played by Joe Moretti, made the song feel mysterious and wild. It wasn't just another rock song, it was a bold statement. The energy and emotion in the song inspired future rock bands like The Who. Other hits, like Please Don't Touch, showed his talent for bringing attitude into music, something rare at the time. His pirate-inspired look, complete with an eye patch, made him stand out. Decades later, artists like Alice Cooper and David Bowie would make theatrical performances a major part of rock. But Kid did it first. Kid wasn't just a singer, he was a visionary. He knew that rock and roll was more than just music, it was an attitude. His rough voice, strong guitar riffs, and wild stage moves made every performance exciting. He had a rebellious spirit that set him apart. Sadly, his life was cut short in a car accident in 1966. He never got to see how much he influenced rock music. If he were alive in 2025, at 90 years old, he would be known as one of the true pioneers of British rock. His music, style, and fearless attitude still live on, proving that legends never fade. 11. Carl Perkins. Before rock became huge, Carl Perkins was one of the first rock and roll musicians. In Tennessee, he was playing his guitar and mixing country and blues. His music was not fancy or polished. It was real, full of energy, and set the stage for rock music. Perkins grew up in a poor farming family. He listened to the sounds around him and played music whenever he could. By the 1950s, Sun Records noticed his talent. He was in the same group as Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, and Jerry Lee Lewis. Then in 1956, he released Blue Suede Shoes. The song had a strong beat and sharp guitar sounds. It became one of the first songs to be a hit on the country, R&B, and pop charts at the same time. This showed that rock and roll was not just for one group of people, it was for everyone. His guitar skills were different from others. He mixed country-style picking with the power of the blues. Even the Beatles admired him and covered his songs. But in 1956, Perkins got into a terrible car accident. This stopped his rise to fame. He might have been as big as Elvis if it hadn't happened. Still, he kept playing. He worked with famous musicians like Paul McCartney and Johnny Cash, leaving a lasting mark on rock and roll. As rock music changed, his style and rhythm stayed important. His influence reached beyond rockabilly, inspiring blues and even punk musicians who loved his raw sound. If he were alive in 2025 at 93 years old, he would be one of the last original rock pioneers. His legacy is not just in his songs, but in every rock song that came after him. He didn't just play music, he helped build rock and roll from the start. 12. Willie Nelson. Born in Abbott, Texas, Willie Nelson is a legend. His music, though mostly country, changed rock and roll too. His voice told stories, and his guitar, Trigger, became famous for its worn look and unique sound. Nelson grew up listening to gospel, blues, and western swing. He started out writing songs in Nashville, and one of his biggest hits was Crazy for Patsy Cline. But Nashville's rules didn't suit him. In the 1970s, he became the face of outlaw country, a style that rejected polished, overly produced music. Albums like Shotgun Willie and Red-Headed Stranger mixed blues, jazz, and rock, bringing in fans beyond country music. Nelson was more than a musician. He was a rebel. He worked with famous rock artists like Bob Dylan, the Rolling Stones, and Neil Young, proving he didn't fit into just one genre. He spoke out about issues, supporting farmers with his Farm Aid concerts and pushing for marijuana legalization. His actions matched the rebellious spirit of rock and roll. Over the years, he kept changing his sound, adding jazz, folk, and reggae influences. His ability to take risks and break musical boundaries made him stand out. If he were still alive in 2025, at 92 years old, he would be one of the last true legends at the crossroads of country and rock. His impact isn't just about music, it's about pushing limits and telling real stories. That's what rock and roll is all about, and no one did it like Willie Nelson. 13. Gene Vincent. Born Vincent Eugene Craddock, Gene Vincent changed rock and roll forever. His voice was haunting, his music raw, and his presence unforgettable. He loved country, blues, and rockabilly. But his life took a turn when a motorcycle accident left him with a permanent injury. Instead of giving up, he used his pain to shape his intense stage presence. In 1956, he had his big break with Be-Bop-A-Lula. The song was wild, echoing rebellion and desire. His band, the Blue Caps, played with a fire that pushed rock and roll forward. Songs like Race with the Devil and Blue Jean Bop kept his legend alive. But fame wasn't kind to him. The mainstream music industry moved on, but his cult following only grew. Across the ocean, British rock bands like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones admired his work and carried his influence into the next generation. Vincent died too soon in 1971, but if he were still alive in 2025, he would be a living symbol of rockabilly's wild spirit. His presence would remind the world of a time when rock and roll was raw, dangerous, and full of life. Would people finally give him the credit he deserved? Would his name stand tall next to rock's greatest legends? It should, because Gene Vincent was one of the true pioneers of rock and roll. 14. Ike Turner. Before rock and roll had a name, it had a sound. Ike Turner helped create that sound. Born in Clarksdale, Mississippi, he grew up surrounded by blues music. He learned piano and guitar, picking up skills from legends like B.B. King and Howlin' Wolf. At just 19, he made history. In 1951, his song Rocket 88 played on the radio, its distorted guitar giving birth to something new, rock and roll. Turner didn't stop there. He pushed music forward with the Ike and Tina Turner Revue, a powerful stage act. Songs like Proud Mary and River Deep, Mountain High became classics. He played guitar with precision, creating sounds that shaped rock music. His influence stretched into soul, funk, and harder rock. But his legacy is complicated. His personal life cast shadows over his career. Even so, his impact on music is undeniable. If he were alive in 2025 at 94 years old, would the world recognize him as a rock pioneer? Would people remember the musician and not just the man? 15. Scotty Moore. Some musicians demand attention, others let their music speak for them. Scotty Moore was one of the quiet legends. Born in Gadsden, Tennessee, he grew up playing country and blues guitar. In 1954, he met a young singer named Elvis Presley. That meeting changed music forever. Moore's guitar style created the rockabilly sound. His fast-picking, sharp notes and echoing riffs became the foundation of rock. Songs like That's All Right, Mystery Train, and Heartbreak Hotel carried his signature style. He didn't just play with Presley, he shaped his sound. Moore never chased fame. He left Presley's band and stayed out of the spotlight. But rock stars like Keith Richards, Jimmy Page, and Eric Clapton all admired him. His guitar playing was clean, precise, and revolutionary. If he were alive in 2025 at 94 years old, would he finally get the full credit he deserved? 16. Dale Hawkins. Born in Louisiana, a place filled with deep blues traditions, Dale Hawkins was one of the early rock and roll musicians who brought a darker, rougher sound to the genre. He mixed rock and roll with the raw energy of the Delta blues. While many musicians stuck to the fast, twangy style of rockabilly, Hawkins gave his music a haunting feel. His most famous song, Susie Q, wasn't just another rock tune. It had a hypnotic, looping guitar riff played by James Burton, a sound that stayed in your head long after the song ended. Unlike other rock songs that rushed forward with energy, Susie Q moved in a slow, eerie way, making it stand out. Over the years, Susie Q refused to fade. Creedence Clearwater Revival brought it back in the 1960s, giving it a new life and making sure Hawkins' influence remained strong. Many musicians who came after him borrowed from his style, even if they didn't always mention his name. Hawkins never became as famous as some of his peers, but his impact on rock music was undeniable. If he were alive in 2025, nearing 90 years old, he would be one of the last living pioneers of a musical era that still inspires artists today. Johnny Burnett. Growing up in Memphis, a city where blues, gospel, and rock and roll were blending into something new, Johnny Burnett wasn't just another musician. He was full of energy, pushing the limits of what early rock could be. With his brother Dorsey and guitarist Paul Burleson, he formed the Rock and Roll Trio. They played with an intensity that was ahead of their time. Before distortion became common, they created it by accident with broken amplifiers, giving their music a rough, unpolished power. Their live shows were wild and unpredictable, filled with raw excitement. Burnett's biggest hit, Train Kept A-Rollin', wasn't just a song, it was a spark that would ignite future generations of rock. The song's powerful rhythm and aggressive style influenced bands like the Yardbirds, Led Zeppelin, and Aerosmith. Every time it was played by a new artist, Burnett's impact on rock grew even larger. But his story was cut short. In 1964, a tragic boating accident ended his life. He was just beginning to shape the next wave of rock and roll when fate intervened, leaving his legacy unfinished. If he had lived to see 2025 at 91 years old, would he hear his influence in modern rock? Would he recognize his own sound in today's music? Or do true pioneers never get to see how far their influence spreads? 18. Ronnie Hawkins. Born in Arkansas, Ronnie Hawkins wasn't just a rock and roll star. He was a leader. He pushed his way into the music world with hard work and a powerful voice. But his biggest impact wasn't just his songs, it was the musicians he trained. While others chased fame in the U.S., Hawkins saw a new path. In 1958, he moved to Canada, bringing rockabilly music with him. There, he didn't just perform, he built a team. His band, the Hawks, started as just another group. Under his guidance, they became something greater. And then they moved on. That was Hawkins' plan all along. The Hawks became the band, one of the most important groups in rock history. Levon Helm, Robbie Robertson, and Rick Danko weren't just bandmates. They were proof of Hawkins' influence. Even after the band found fame, Hawkins remained a legend. He played with music giants like John Lennon, the Rolling Stones, and Bob Dylan. He wasn't just a performer, he was part of rock history. If he were still here in 2025 at age 90, would he be proud? Would he see his name honored in rock and roll history? 19. Sonny Burgess. In the early days of rock and roll, when music was raw and wild, Sonny Burgess appeared like a force of nature. Born in Arkansas, he grew up surrounded by country and blues. But he didn't just play music, he attacked it. His style was loud, fast, and untamed, paving the way for punk long before punk existed. After serving in the military, he came back looking for more. He formed the Pacers, a band as wild as he was. They played like they were on fire, leaving audiences breathless. Soon, Sun Records, the label that launched Elvis and Johnny Cash, gave them a shot. Burgess's first single, Red-Headed Woman, We Want a Boogie, wasn't just a song, it was an explosion. Guitars screamed, saxophones wailed, and Burgess's voice roared. He wasn't making music, he was unleashing chaos. While other rockabilly artists cleaned up their sound, Burgess stayed wild. Songs like Thunderbird and Ain't Got a Thing proved he wasn't about to change. He never became a mainstream star, but that didn't matter. True legends aren't measured by fame, but by their influence. When rockabilly made a comeback in the 1980s, it was clear Burgess had left his mark. His sound still echoes in garage rock, punk, and every musician who refuses to follow the rules. 20. Larry Williams. Born in New Orleans, a city full of music, Larry Williams mixed jazz and R&B, unlike other rock musicians who were influenced by country or blues. His piano playing was loud and powerful, and his songs were full of energy. His music made people move. Dizzy Miss Lizzie was fast and exciting, and the Beatles later made it famous. Slow Down had a strong beat that even the Beatles couldn't soften. Songs like Boney Maroney and Short Fat Fanny were fun and full of life. But his life was not always easy. He had legal problems and personal struggles. Even though he was not as famous as some other rock musicians, his music influenced many. His piano style and confidence helped shape funk and soul music. If he were alive in 2025 at 90 years old, what would he think about today's music? Would he be proud of how rock changed, or would he feel something was missing? One thing is clear, his music still lives on. His energy and passion continue to inspire new musicians and keep the spirit of rock alive.